I'm sorry.
All right, we are live with our latest edition of Real Talk, where we put the real in real estate. And of course, I am so glad to have a co-pilot with me, Justin Landon, as he refers to himself, the newish MetroTech CEO, now that he's been here for a few months. And then Brian Boero, with 1000 Watt. He is the CEO of a marketing and brand agency and is here this evening to talk to us about future proofing your brand. Helping us maybe with a little bit of a paradigm shift of providing value in this ever-growing, changing marketplace for realtors alike, and helping to understand some consumer behavior. So, Brian, we're so happy to have you there with.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Ashley. Thank you. I look forward to this discussion for sure.
Well, good. Before we just popped on live, we were just talking about you guys coming for the summit here at the end of June and commenting how sticky and humid our lovely our lovely weather is here in North Texas. And you are hailing from Oakland, California. Is that correct?
Yeah, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, so we're, I guess, weather weaklings. We can't take heat, certainly not humidity. So I expected the heat in Dallas in late June, but the humidity threw me. So I got to reset my expectations.
Fantastic. You know what, that leads us into what we're really all having to do right now, aren't we, Brian? We're having to reset expectations in this new era of real estate. And that's why we're so excited to have you on, because, the summit that you guys just put on in June was so informative, talking about different business strategies, different brand opportunities. What would a new real estate company actually look like if we could abandon all the things that we know? Would we still create a brokerage in the same way that we see it today? And, Justin and I have been reeling ever since, and that's why we're so excited to have you here this evening. So why don't we just start off with maybe talking a little bit about some of those highlights and takeaways from the summit, and that'll kind of lead us into a little bit more conversation about what we can do to future-proof, the brokerage model and the brand of the individual agent. So maybe, Brian, some takeaways from your perspective.
Sure. So we did this 3-day event in late June in Dallas, and we drew people from all over the country. And the whole idea with it was, we are at this really extraordinary moment where things are shifting in a way that they haven't shifted before. And I've been around this business for 27 years. And I've heard so many people say so many times, the consumer is going to change everything. Technology is going to change everything. These new disruptive companies are going to change everything. And so I've learned to be really skeptical when people say that. But I think what we've experienced with the lawsuit verdict in October, and then the settlement and everything that has happened over the last 6-8 months in the media and just the popular mind, I do think that this feels different to me than changes in the past. And it feels different to me because consumers have been introduced to the inner workings of real estate and how agents get paid or don't get paid in a way they hadn't been before. We're all obsessed with real estate in the United States of America. It's a national pastime.
Yeah.
Seldom have we really been engaged with the real estate industry. So that's what all the media fracas and talk about this over the last 6 months has really produced, is this consumer awareness that gets us to what's happening this month, which is all of this massive change. New conversations are going to happen. And so what we wanted to do with the event, and will continue to do, is get those who are prepared to be prepared to meet that moment, to meet the moment with confidence and think about what their value proposition is, think about how they can tell a story, position their brand or their business in a way maybe they haven't thought before, and really find the opportunity in all of this really messy and, frankly, painful change that is going to unfold in the coming weeks, months, and years. There is an opportunity in there, and that's really what we were focused on in the event.
Justin, what are some things? I mean, we walked away from that just, kind of chewing on so many things, not to mention the networking opportunities. And that's why it's so important to be in those spaces and not just get the highlight reel. Because to be in the room with the other thought leaders that have those wheels moving at the same time was amazing. But Justin, what were some of the things that you walked away from?
Yeah, I mean, there were a number of really cool things, but for me, probably the thing that I've continued to reference since we left that conference is the idea that we are in the service business, not the sales business. And I
Amen.
think what Brian, you did such a great job on that stage during your presentation, and a lot of the presenters throughout the couple of days, was really focusing on what are the values and tangible benefits that we're providing to clients and customers, and even somebody who doesn't sell real estate but serves people who do those things. Again, having the same. I'm not trying to sell my members on what we do, right? I'm trying to develop a value proposition to them, and I think that's a real change in positioning to our membership. We talk so much about scripts. We talk so much about overcoming objections. And like, that's in my mind, just the wrong way to think about this. It's about providing a service and helping educate the consumer about why they need us and why there's a value behind those things. So that was the big takeaway for me. There were lots of little pieces I love, but that's the one that stuck with me. No doubt
So
about it.
I just had Parker, as you were talking, messaging her, great producer in the background, because you just did a webinar, and I will actually send Parker the link to that webinar that you guys just did a few days ago, so our members can watch that too. But this is one that first stuck out at me. So maybe talk about what this slide was actually meaning, Brian, because I thought it really truly hit home.
Sure. So one of the things that we do at 1000 Watt is tons of research with consumers. And, other organizations do that, but we tend to ask questions that may not have been asked before. And we look at it with perhaps a different set of eyes. And so one of the many things that we found over the last few years of research is that, generally speaking, for years and years and years, if you asked buyers, hey, if you paid your real estate agent that helped you buy a house X, okay, do you feel that feels right? Is it too much? Is it too little? And for the most part, people were cool with how real estate agents were paid. There was really no sort of natural sense among consumers that, gosh, I'm paying my agent too much. That was not present prior to last fall.
Of course.
And so what has happened since last fall is we've had new information sort of enter the consciousness. And so now what we're finding is that because people are generally aware of something going on in the real estate industry, no matter where they're getting their news or who they're talking to, when you introduce questions about compensation now, you find that with consumers, and we've done tons of focus groups and surveys, and you see this, it's really quite striking, they're easily influenced. So if you make the case to a group of potential or recent home buyers that real estate agents getting paid X is way too much, and that system is broken, you can get them to think that way.
Sure.
If, on the other hand, you say, for example, I am a real estate professional and I'm going to help you buy a house. And here's why I'm worth my fee. And here's what I will do to make my service very valuable to you. Generally speaking, you can make people connect the dots in terms of value. So the situation's fluid and it's kind of up for grabs. People will hear one thing and think this. It's your job now as a practitioner to make the case, because minds are open and people are either going to think you're worth it or you're not. So your job is to make the case right now. Now, my comment about people loving their agent without truly valuing them is super important, because you may have heard statistics and research that it comes out of the National Association of Realtors. They do this every single year, and they ask people who have just gone through a transaction, including transactions on the buy side, and they say, hey, did you like your agent? Oh, yes, I did. I loved my agent. My agent was fantastic. I would use them again. If you talk to consumers directly, they will often tell you how much they love their agent.
Sure.
But when you start to push on that and you start to dig deeper, what you realize is that love is sort of fragile. And because on the buy side of transactions, we never had to have the compensation and value discussion that we had on the listing side, it was just kind of based on, I like this person. And I, for the most part, didn't really feel like I was paying them. Our research shows that 75% of recent buyers can't even recall how or how much their agent was paid, which is scary. It was a personal relationship that didn't feel like money was happening. Now it's all different, and you can't have a relationship just based on I like you. That's not enough. That's a necessary but not sufficient level at which to operate. So you have to make a connection. People like to work with people they like, but they have to value you now in a way that they haven't in the past. And that is the leveling up that needs to happen here.
Well, the thing that just popped into my head was we always talk about people work with people they know, like, and trust, right? I mean, that's the triangle. That's the line. No, people will interview and dialogue with people they know, like, and trust. That might not actually equate to hiring them to represent them now in that process. If we can now not convert that into what that true value proposition is, what the solution to the problem that individual might be facing. And so, of course, I was geeking out on your webinar and I was watching it before we got here. And there were a lot of things that I was just writing. One was the average couple knows 13.6 agents.
Yes.
That was mind blowing. That was such a huge statistic, Brian.
Yeah. So we did a survey of adult consumers across the country. And we said, first of all, we filtered out anybody that works in the real estate industry or has a member of their family in the real estate industry.
So you interviewed like 10 people?
Thousand, by the way. I know a few thousand agents. Yeah, I'm an outlier.
Yeah, I think we're all outliers. But and so we said, well, just how many real estate agents do you know as neighbors, friends, your kid's soccer coach, people you know from work or church or wherever? Like, how many people? And the answer to that question was 6.8. The average American, almost 7 people they know personally are real estate agents. Now, if you take the fact that 70% of home purchases are made by couples,
sure,
right? Then you have 13.6 personal realtor acquaintances in every, home buying household. And the point there is that this has been a business that has been on the buy side, kind of loosey-goosey, doesn't really feel like you're paying. I really like, my neighbor down the street, or I like my kid's soccer coach or whoever, right? And that's all great. Relationships still matter, but we need to go beyond know, like, and trust, which is sort of an old sales paradigm, which is valid, but that alone is not enough. We have to add in value on the buy side, right? And that's the challenge here.
And there's another slide we're going to bring up in a second. And that one I think is a great segue into what you're talking about. And it's talking about, answering those questions. It's kind of internally having that dialogue with yourself. What are you? What is the job your client is hiring you to do? How do you do that job better than your competition? And why do you do what you do? And I thought those were such good questions to kind of springboard that conversation.
Yeah. I offered this by way of introducing a book that a lot of people in the real estate industry have read and cite often, which is Simon Sinek's Start With Why, which is a very good book. It's a very good book. And I think we have misapplied it oftentimes in real estate, and talked to so many, big brokerage companies, team leaders, solo practitioners. Well, I got to figure out my why, start with my why. And what happens is everybody gets, to more or less the same place. Well, I like to help people because it's a great career where I can make a lot of money. I believe in helping families achieve home ownership, or whatever it is, right? I mean, there's a lot of good whys, but
Sure.
they're not differentiated. So what's important right now is to start with other questions, the ones that I suggested, which seem ridiculously basic when you look at them. But what am I? Well, am I a top producer? This term that we use in the business? Well, if I'm a top producer, then what am I producing? I'm producing sales. Am I a salesperson? What am I selling? Do I need to sell home ownership? No, I don't. 95% of Americans lust for home ownership, right? So you start unpacking these really simple questions, and you get to a clearer understanding of who you are as a professional who does real estate, and what you do for your clients that they think is valuable, and then how you are different than or better than your competition. And there's tons of competition in real estate. So figure out those things first. Your why will always be in the background. And, that's important. But really what matters in terms of your outward facing marketing and messaging and value articulation are these other questions.
Brian, I've said it so often recently that for so long, the buyer's agent in particular, has been viewed, whether by themselves or by the public, as, some combination of tour guide, sort of like advisor on, condition or style of home, and transaction coordinator, quarterback, and then some negotiation on price and terms. And, that's never going to change. They're going to be all those things moving forward. But the thing I keep going back to is, at the end of the day, investment in real estate historically in America is the single greatest investment that you can make. It's safe. It is steady. It has done nothing but go up over time. Certainly nothing but go up over time over the last 7 years. But for the most part, we don't position our members as true financial advisors in the way that they truly could be and can be as they learn to talk about real estate as a financial vehicle. And one of the things I've really been talking a lot about is helping our members, focus in on those financial advising skills, because the investment in a home is not different than investing your money in the marketplace or in another income producing activity, even if it is your personal home.
Brian, you actually put in there, and I wrote down these three things because Justin and I were just talking about that. And the listing agent is really attached to a product. They have to sell their services and what they're going to do for the seller, but their performance is tied to an actual product, whereas a buyer's agent is tied to those services and other things that are not connected directly to a product. And you listed out these three things, and I'll let our great producer Parker types those in the chat. And the first one was professional advisor or advisory, and that's what we're talking about. The second one was capital preservation, and then the third one was risk mitigation. Which is what Justin is talking about. So maybe kind of let's walk through those three things of those are kind of like that's the new triangle maybe of what we need to be looking at as far as what a buyer's agent should be reframing that from.
Yeah, those three things were really the distillation of a lot of research that we have done over the past 3 years. And it's sort of a simplification, but my point is, there are lots of things that you can say about what a good buyer agent does, some of which both of you mentioned, right? Well, I can show you houses. I can let you into houses. I can project manage this process for you. I can do all of these things, okay? And those things are great. And if you're good at that, that's valuable. But those really aren't the highest order functions of a good buyer agent. And what I suggest is that rather than just listing out the 100 things that you will do to help your buyers through the process of buying a home really focus on the things that we know matter most to them. And we know that the whole reason why I'm able to say this is because we've spent countless hours speaking to consumers about just this issue. And there are three things. First of all, the number one thing that buyers value from a good agent, and you have to dig, because remember, for the most part, historically, these folks didn't even think they paid them. They didn't know anything about this. It's just they like them. Okay. Number one is risk mitigation. And this is powerful because it is emotional. So home prices are high. They're coming down a little bit in some markets, but look, homes are really expensive. And mortgage rates, even though they're coming down a little bit now, have been really high. We have this huge affordability problem in America. And so what I'm doing is incredibly risky for me. It's risky for me financially. It's risky for me emotionally. It's risky for me logistically. If I get this wrong, I have a huge problem that can seriously mess up my life. It can mess it up financially if I buy a money pit. If I move my family into a place that we turn out hating, well, that's going to mess up my life. This is an inherently risky thing. And the job of a good buyer agent is to de-risk the deal. And so when you talk about de-risking the deal, you're talking about things like, okay, I know because I'm really good at this and I'm going to do the research. Well, how much is enough to pay to get the home you want, but how much is too much? The difference between those two numbers, there are tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars writing on that question. And that involves a lot of skill. How do I read between the lines of property disclosures, reports that the seller has to disclose? How do I read what's not there? What do I know? If I'm a buyer, how do I know what's a problem and what is not a problem? That is what a good buyer agent does. They de-risk the deal with that knowledge. And then secondly, and relatedly, it's capital preservation. For most home buyers today, many at least, particularly first timers, they're pushing all of their chips under the table to buy.
Absolutely.
Okay, right? Every $100 or $1,000 that you can save them is going to matter. And that's where negotiation comes in. It's where offer strategy comes in. Again, that question of how much is enough, but how much is too much. Capital preservation. And then thirdly, in terms of framing it, right, professional advisory. And this is where it gets into, am I a project manager or a chauffeur or a paperwork manager, or am I a professional advisor who is going to help you make really high stakes decisions from a position of skill and knowledge? So that's kind of like, if you boiled it down, it's those things. Now you have to be able to express it, but that's the heart of the matter.
So Brian, that brings up a good thing, and I'm going to say something that is not meant to be insensitive to the 1.5 million realtors that we have nationwide. We've got nearly 27,000 here at MetroTex, but what you just articulated was key. And if we're out in the streets in these public forums and these Facebook groups, and we're talking about I don't want to sound insensitive and say minute details with the change in the marketplace and how the buyer's agent is getting paid or what that looks like in additional paperwork or anything else. But if we are so focused on those finite details and we're not focused on these, I really feel like we're missing the mark in this grander scheme of this conversation with the increased costs, the insurance, the interest rates, the insurance costs, the raising values, the housing affordability crisis, all of these things. And we are focused right now on the additional friction maybe in our marketplace on how we do our job, not why we do our job and what the consumer covets about how we do it, appropriately. And I think that's what you really articulated well, both in the conference and in this webinar, was really trying to reshape that mindset. And that triangle is so important. because it's not just know, like, and trust now. We have to be a professional advisor. We have to be knowledgeable on capital preservation. We need to be really focused on risk mitigation because we do hold the livelihoods and the futures of so many people in our hands on a daily basis. And getting back to those conversations in the midst of all of the distraction on maybe how we structurally do our job is really important right now. Justin, I know these are conversations that we're having in the background, and as Metrotechs, making sure that we're bringing people like Brian to the forefront. As he's talking, what are some of the things that are coming to your forefront?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, what this is really about is for years, everybody in this industry has been talking about, elevating, raising the bar, increasing what it means to where the realtor are, all of these things. And I go back, you all have heard me talk about this. I'm third generation. My grandmother was a broker. My dad was a broker, is still one. And growing up, my dad had, 12 Blazers, and every single one had its own realtor R pin on it, right? To be a realtor. And we've over time, that realtor has meant less and less and less as the industry has grown and grown and grown. We went from having 500,000 agents to 1.5 million. And so, I see an opportunity here to sort of redefine what it means to be a realtor, the trademarked, registered, mark, brand of a realtor. And I think anybody that said, I want to raise the bar and we need to put more on this. We're calling the bluff, right? This is what this is doing. It's saying it's time to raise that bar. And I know that's been our focus at Metrotechs is how do we help our members become, that next iteration of whatever real estate looks like. And the thing I keep thinking about, and I was talking to somebody about this the other day, 25 years ago now, but give or take 25 years ago, sub-agency is the predominant way we did business went away. And we transitioned, although sub-agency still exists in Texas. Primarily, we now do buyer agency, right? Sub-agency is pretty rare. But we still pay agents, at least until, now. We were still paying agents the same way we were doing it under sub-agency. And it's in many ways, that's sort of the root of all of this. And now 25 years later, 20 years later, we're sort of catching up on what it means to be a buyer's agent, a true fiduciary for the buyer that's providing a service sort of unconnected from the property they buy, right? Whether they buy this property, that property, or that property, my job is to represent them through this process, whether they buy a house or not, right? I'm still providing that service. And that's just a big mind shift for our members. And I'm very sensitive to that fact that, it's a massive mind shift, right? We're not going to move this ship in a day. I remember I talked to an attorney years ago and she said, Justin, it takes 2 years for the real estate agents in a market to understand the laws change because it just takes that long to play the game of telephone, through all of the channels in real estate. And so anyway, I think it's an exciting time and I'm really glad we have people like Brian, helping our realtors in the field navigate it.
Well, Justin, one thing that you said there I think is very true, and that is the bluff is being called. And, I think if we're honest as an industry, we've talked about raising the bar for years and years and years. We all want, more skilled realtors. We want more skilled professionalism in this business. And honestly, we didn't do it. And right?
So we did it.
What is happening now is the bluff has been called, but not by us. It has been called, it's the way nobody would have wanted it, right? Some pretty messed up events precipitated all of this, right? This lawsuit and all this garbage, right? But the reality is, okay, now the bluff has been called, right? And the consumer is the shot caller for the first time really ever. And, it's like the way I sometimes describe it is we have two arms, okay? And we have a bicep in both of them. And we were an athlete that had a really strong bicep on one arm, the listing arm, where every agent who's worth their salt, could articulate their value in a listing presentation, tell you exactly why a seller, was paying them how much, et cetera. And then this arm just withered on the buy side. For not all, there are plenty of agents who are always good at this, but like I'm talking like macro industry level. Like this arm on the buy side, the value muscle just kind of withered and is really weak. And all of a sudden, we have to get it really strong. And some will do that. And honestly, some won't. I just, some won't. It's tough. And that's really the challenge that everybody faces. The bluff has been called, Justin, like you said, right? And it's like, okay, we got to work out this value muscle and get it strong quick.
And I think what I want to kind of echo what you said, Brian, but put it just a little more of a finer point on it, which is we are being forced to change.
Yeah.
And if you've ever spent time with me in a room, the thing I love to say more than anything, my goal as the CEO of MetroTech to really, the goal of my family, the goal of everything that I touch is always change before someone else makes you. And I think, unfortunately, we're all now feeling the pain of being changed at a pace that was not by design. It's an aggressive schedule. It's an aggressive change. And I wish we could have done it to ourselves, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years ago, because it wouldn't have been done this way. We would have done it differently, because I think we can all agree some of the terms and some of the ways this is happening are not ideal and may not best serve the consumer always. Now, the end result may still be really positive, but there's going to be some tough things in the middle. So I want to acknowledge those things for our members. But that doesn't mean that the end product, right? I think we kind of talked about that, Brian, earlier, about thinking about the end product. I think the end product of this will be really positive. But there are some things in the middle that I'm not super excited about, and I wish were different, but it is where we are.
Yeah.
So a couple of things that I want to echo. One is immediately what went into, Brian, when you were talking about the biceps of the two arms, was my forehand in pickleball is really strong, and therefore my right bicep is really big. But my backhand, my two-handed backhand needs a little bit of work, and so my left bicep needs to be strengthened. So that was the one thing. And Justin's dying because I've told Justin he has to get better at pickleball so we can play at conferences.
The particular irony here, Brian, is you don't understand how much business Ashley gets on the pickleball court. Okay, so the muscle analogy in this context is really kind of funny.
I'm always bringing it to the forefront. Yeah, I'm trying. Number two is Keith Robinson with Next Home was on your stage, and he actually said, basically, we've been saying for years we want to raise the bar as the realtor industry, and here we are. And then it was like, whoa, wait a minute. We didn't actually mean what we said. And he kind of articulated it in a really funny, punchy way. And we've actually got him on 2 weeks from now, which is absolutely amazing, in which I said, thank you so much, Brian, for helping us make those connections, because we love to have Keith on. So, that's absolutely right. We've been saying it for years that we need a realtor cleansing. Let's get the true professionals to rise to the top and all those competencies to really come out. And now, we're kind of forced to. And of course, Sherry echoed that. Justin, your number one fan, who used to be my mother and business partner, but is now Justin Landon's number one fan, has now said, we've all heard exactly what Justin said, raise the bar, etc. But this friction that we didn't necessarily create can truly produce an incredible raising of the bar. This is the time for redefining everything, and what an amazing opportunity. Brian, what you should know about Sherry is she seldom gives compliments, but she's done it every Real Talk that Justin's been on. So, I guess I'm being replaced.
Terrific. That's good. Change is happening to the industry. The industry decided not to be an active shaper of its future. So, the future is coming hard at us. And, I think it can sound trite to sound that there's opportunity, to say that there's opportunity in the middle of this. I think that's a true statement. But to your point, Justin, I think it's going to be rough. And I think some folks are not going to be able to navigate this. And it is going to cause some folks to think about maybe exiting the business. And that's the reality of it. None of this is going to be easy. There's going to be difficulty involved in all of this. But if we really want what we say we want, which is a better, more professional real estate business, then, ultimately that's not a bad outcome.
So I think this is a great segue, and we're going to bring up the list of 5 things up here again, because I thought one of your points again to that webinar, which we have the link in the chat, is draw the distinction as to what makes you great. And that's really what people need to be focusing on right now. Please hone in on the compliance portion of the settlement agreement and how you need to structurally do your business that way. But this is the time to really lean in on those distinctions and why somebody, and I loved the visual of Shark Tank when you're pitching to the sharks, because I love that. And we are entrepreneurs and we are selling ourselves and doing those things. And so I thought this slide with the 5 things to kind of help people articulate that was really great. So maybe let's walk through that for a couple of minutes.
Sure. I mean, think benefits, not features. That's really what I was talking about when I was talking about, the whole laundry list of things that you do as an agent versus the 3 super important things, right? So we think features and benefits. Sometimes if you're involved in selling a product or building a product, you want to talk about the benefits of the product, not just the features. Same thing with the service business like real estate, okay? The 100 little things that you do to get through a transaction, those are features. The big 3 things that I talked about 10 minutes ago, those are the benefits. So think benefits before you think features. Get emotionally intelligent. I used an example there around potential downsizers, older homeowners, and what motivates them, because we've done some research on that. And we got some very interesting responses. But really what you're trying to figure out is, what is the emotional underpinning of my customer's motivation? What is scaring my customer or my prospective customer? What moves them? What causes them to freeze up? And that's really where we get into this whole sort of mind shift of talking about ourselves in our marketing, which has been the hallmark of a lot of real estate marketing, to be honest, right? Me. I'm the best, I'm number one, I'm a top producer, I do this, I do that. But really speaking to your prospective customer in a way that makes them feel seen.
So I think this slide is what you were talking about, right? When you think of selling, what do you see as the biggest challenge? And let's not make assumptions. Let's really hone in on what that looks like.
Yeah, right. And this was a survey of, baby boomers. Okay, the downsizers. Everybody says, well, baby boomers are sitting on this disproportionately large section of our housing stock, and high rates have locked them in, and low inventory has locked them in. So we wanted to get a clearer picture of that. And the response was somewhat surprising in the sense that just the logistical sort of payload of that move was like holding people up. And if you think beneath that, right, it's not just boxes and trucks. It is the emotional
memories
of that, right? And so when you're speaking in your marketing, have emotional intelligence and speak to the emotional substrate of your customer's psyche. So that was the idea there. And then, really, moments of need. So the example that I used to illustrate this is an ad campaign that we probably all know, which is the Got Milk campaign.
Love it.
And, that started, almost 25, 30 years ago now. And it branched off in a bunch of different directions. But the original campaign concept was, for example, you show a picture of a peanut butter jelly sandwich with a bite out of it. And then the text was just got milk. And what that identified was a moment of need. There are many moments when you might want a glass of milk, when a glass of milk sounds nice, but there is a moment when you're like, oh man, I really need a glass of milk. And that's why that campaign was so amazing. It identified moments of need. And that's, what I'm suggesting that we should be doing vis-a-vis our real estate clients. Well,
Brian, I want to stop you right there, because that was something that was a light bulb moment. One, I loved you bringing back the got milk, because I immediately went into the historical context of who shot Aaron Burr. When I saw that was the one for me that stuck with me.
It's one of the greatest
Right?
commercials of all time. I mean, there's no question.
It was so great. And he was like, Hamilton. And my daughter loves the musical Hamilton. We just saw it, so I digress, but that's bringing a personal attachment to that. But I loved you sitting there and using it as an equation of turning when the want turns into the need, because often we will hear from the consumer, well, I want to sell, I don't need to sell. And how do you help them convert that? Or when does that turn? Or I want to buy, and then it turns into I need to buy. And you were illustrating that, and I thought that was great.
Yeah, for sure. And the fourth one was tell the truth, which seems obvious. But, look, and I don't say this as if I think we've been lying to the American public systematically, but we have shown an inclination to not speak honestly about the nature of the transaction, and we have not spoken to the truth that our prospective customers hold within themselves. So my example there is something that I hear all the time, and you see real estate tech companies do this, but I also see practitioners. We make real estate easy. I make real estate easy. Well, okay, if I'm your customer, I'm calling BS on that immediately, because I know in my heart and in my mind that this thing is not easy. You may be the world's greatest realtor, but it's still not easy. So don't tell me pretty little lies. So what we have found through our research is that really the most effective thing that you can do, which is simple, is to tell the truth. Because when you tell the truth to somebody and you recognize something that they feel, even if it's unpleasant, then you are creating connection, and connection leads to know, like, trust, and value, right? So, we often say, well, if I tell people it's going to be hard and messy, then I'll scare them away. The opposite is actually true. Real estate transactions are always hard. They're hard in 10 different ways. I'm going to help you navigate this really hard thing with grace and intelligence. That's the truth, right? If you're a good practitioner. Not that it's easy, because it's not. And then draw distinctions, whole different conversation. But as you noted, Justin, there are 1.5 million realtors in the United States of America. That's a lot of people chasing a finite amount of business. And so what's going to happen here, as we're forced to up our game in terms of articulating value, is you not only have to articulate your value so that people know what a good agent does and why they're valuable, but it's also important to explain what a not so good agent does. Okay. And people shy away from this. I don't want to go negative. I don't want to be nasty. You're not naming names. Okay. But what we have found, and again, I'm speaking mostly to the buy side here this afternoon for obvious reasons, but people who love their agent don't really know exactly what they did, don't know a lot of the things that went on behind the scenes, and they don't know the difference between a good agent and a not so good agent. And so part of articulating your value is to say, this is what I do because I'm really good and I'm valuable. And honestly, this is what a not so great agent doesn't do. And here is the risk with going with that agent, right? And this is where we get back to this whole notion of like, okay, my brother-in-law may be a great guy, but maybe he shouldn't be the person I hire to help me buy a house, right? So that's it, all ties together here. And we're going to have to start drawing distinctions. It's like, brand X versus, Tide detergent. Here's the same shirt. Tide gets it clean. Brand X doesn't. Like, this is basic marketing and advertising stuff. So that's what I mean by draw distinctions.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Justin.
When you talked about telling the truth, Brian, I once asked a room full of agents, I said, I want you all to remember the best transaction you've ever had. the one where that client 5-starred you, you know, they donated money to your favorite charity. They sent your kid to college to thank you for the transaction. and then you ask them a month after the end of that transaction, you want to do it again? Not a single one is going to say yes. Not one. Because nobody wants to do it again.
Yeah.
And I think you're so accurate to say that oftentimes as an industry, we have made it seem too easy. You know, the listed in 3 days, sold it for full price, the you know, got my client, you know, this house after just, you know, after only looking for a couple of days. I mean, we're so guilty of that because it just is. It makes it seem like, you know, look what I can accomplish in a quick turnaround. Yeah. But I think really speaking to that authenticity, right? And I'm a big believer in vulnerability, which is as an agent, sort of acknowledging your own vulnerability. Like, I'm a great agent. Not even I can protect you from all of the pain that this is going to bring, but you know, we're going to manage it together, and I'm going to be on your team, you know, ride or die. You know, I think that matters. And on the drawing distinctions piece, really agree. We'll just remind everybody that article, I think it's 15 of the Code of Ethics, does describe how we draw those distinctions, and so it's very important.
There's a way to do it.
Yeah,
it's a good point, Justin. There's a way to do it and a way not to do it.
That's right.
There's one more slide. We have 14 minutes left, and while we have not had a lot of participation in the chat, other than my beautiful 10-year-old daughter who said hello, Mom, right when we started, and of course my great business partner who is Justin's #1 fan. You know, I think everybody's soaking it up, and I think that's what's great. And really, from the MetroTech side, we want to continue to be bringing value to our membership so they can understand, they can be better and elevate themselves, Brian. And I think that's what we're doing this evening. And I thought this slide was a great way to, you know, kind of land the plane and what we're trying to do. So maybe let's walk through this because I love that title, The Secret, What a Great Agent Really Does. And it's kind of a summation of what we've been talking about, but it kind of goes a little deeper. So maybe you can delve into this one.
Yeah, for sure. This is what I mean by drawing distinctions. And it gets to the whole features versus benefits thing and all of that, right? So for years, people believed what an agent does when they work with buyers is mostly these 3 things: find homes and show homes. Okay. Be a neighborhood guide. Okay, these things are not worthless, certainly, but this is what people think buyer agents do. And then like manage tasks, project manage, okay? Why do people believe this? Well, they believe this because this is what real estate agents have said they do. So we as an industry have generally told people we do. Again, I know there are people who will see this who say, well, not me. Well, no. That's right. But generally speaking, this is what the industry has told people buyer agents do. Real estate agents have said these things, right? We have told America, consumers, that this is what we do because these are the easiest things we do. The secret is this: there are lots of agents who can only do these easy things. They don't have the training or skill to do the hard things, the things that matter most to you. Right. So you can see what we did there. And this is moving from being the person that we end up loving because they took us to 100 houses on Saturdays, Sundays, Tuesdays, Thursdays before we wrote an offer that we got accepted. That helped me deal with all the paperwork and made it manageable. Like, I love that person, but what we're talking about now is something deeper. Those are the easy things. And, you know, as an industry, we haven't done it ourselves many favors by focusing on just these easy things. But the honest reality, if we're honest with ourselves, is there's a reason why we focused on those easy things. And that's because too many in this business can't really go beyond them. So this is what I mean by drawing distinctions. All of the folks listening to this, like, you operate in different neighborhoods, cities, towns, like, it's all different, but you get the idea here.
You know, and Brian, one of the things I love. Oh, go ahead, Ashley.
No, so the one thing I was going to say, which I thought was really interesting when we look at the three things that you have here, Brian, find homes and show homes, be a neighborhood guide, and manage tasks, for the most part, those are the things that technology can replace. And we've already seen self-showing, services and activity. We have the real estate portals, which give the consumer access to the majority of the home listings. A neighborhood guide, man. I mean, we can see, that being published on the internet and social media channels, TikTok, right? You can watch your favorite influencer in different subsects of the country, and they can help you figure out neighborhoods and different things. And in managing tasks, I mean, that's absolutely something that can be done. So that's where people, I think, so often get to a place of thinking the robots are going to replace us, right? Artificial intelligence is going to take over. And that's because we're really putting the emphasis on things that can be done in a new system or a CRM or technology or anything else. And what you've really been talking about today has been about trying to draw that distinction away from what can replace you in a consistent sense, and really showing what that value proposition is with what you bring to the table over and beyond that. And this is what has exposed that. This settlement and this lawsuit has exposed the kinks in the armor, and to that level of opportunity that is there. I know people don't think it's exciting right now, but it is shifting the brainwaves. It is shifting in how we're approaching those conversations. And to that, I do think it's exceptionally exciting.
Yeah, and I think what it's worth saying, and because we have this conversation about, we acknowledge that we're asking more, there's more going to be asked of agents. We're raising the bar. We're putting pressure. And I want to say it explicitly. My hope is every single one of our 27,000 members levels up and comes along for the ride. That's my hope. Now, and I think, our goal at MetroTex is to ensure that we're going to do our best to provide the tools and resources, through conversations like this one and 1,000 other ones that are going to take place over the next 6 months or 12 months or 10 years, and working with our brokerages. I mean, that's our goal, right? You could listen to this and say like, oh, some are going to make it and some aren't. Well, sure. Our goal may not be realistic, but our goal is to bring as many of our members along for the ride that are willing to sign up for it and put the work in.
So, and Brian, we've got Johnny Moad, who is my esteemed president-elect and is along for the ride with me and was at your summit. He said agents work hard to brand themselves and their brokerages. However, sometimes they forget the consumer is hiring the agent based off their personal brand. It's funny as a veteran agent that some of our newer agents aren't even aware of what their personal brand even is yet. You touched on that again. I keep on going back to your webinar, and I hope people will go to the link in the chat and watch that in further and get that detail that you go into. But I think it's also shifting what that personal brand is. That doesn't necessarily mean marketing. Your personal brand could be it's the distinction, it's the differentiator between you and the next person, which I think you did so eloquently in that webinar at the summit, and even scratching the surface on today. So maybe you want to touch on that a little bit more.
Yeah, we could spend 12 hours talking about personal brand. Of course. But I think it's been a great distraction, this notion of personal branding. And there have been plenty of companies willing to take advantage of many agents, in some cases, wrong-headed notions about what building a personal brand is. A personal brand is not a caricature of yourself. It's not self-absorption. Really, I think it would be much more constructive for most practitioners to start from a position or a paradigm of not thinking about my personal brand, but thinking about my unique value proposition and how I am different from everybody else I'm competing with, right?
Yes.
The pictures you take of yourself are not your personal brand. Your logo is not your personal brand. I really think that whole paradigm has led many agents astray. I'll say that.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. Justin, do you have anything to add on to that?
No, I am not a branding expert. That's Brian's job.
No, and it's hard, right, Brian? I mean, and this is what, Justin and I obviously deal with on a daily basis is the fact that the trade organization side is not tied to production. It's not tied to other things. We are there to serve the swath of our membership. And what we want is for all of our members to be able to elevate their value proposition, their brand offering, and those type of things. But with the understanding that there are some business models that aren't going to elevate it, and that's okay too. And I think you talked about that, is that there's not a one size fits all scenario here. And ultimately, there could be an a la carte type of service offering that it comes out of the settlement and out of what this landscape looks like. And that's okay too. I don't think we should demonize the fact that, non-traditional business models will probably emerge out of this. And in fact, we have 5 minutes left, but we talked about it originally that we were going to allow you to talk about what you guys unveiled, which was if we abandon everything else, if we didn't have the traditional, brick and mortar brokerage business model and everything, what would somebody do now? Can you do like the abridged version for our members?
The abridged version, so we did a thought exercise at the event, as you said, Ashley, and it was the notion of, if we were going to start a real estate brokerage right now, free of inertia, history, politics, and we had a few $1 million, what would that look like? Something that met this moment. And what we came up with, actually, we wrote a whole post about this. I don't know if you can circulate that, but we shared it on our website. But
it was your latest, I think, blog post. So we'll try to get that on the chat as well.
And so we came up, because this is what we do, we came up with a whole, website design and a visual identity system, logo, all of that type of stuff. We named the company, we called it Avanti. And what it was basically a retainer / menu of service business model focused exclusively on buyers. And that notion has been tried before with very limited success. But our view was we don't know how many buyers are going to go for alternatives, and there will be more alternatives out there in light of what has transpired. We don't know how many are going to take those alternatives as their choice. But what we can do is anticipate that the consumer mind has shifted, and to get ahead of it, what if we offered this type of service offering? And maybe you decide to do it and go all in on that. Or maybe you do what you would call traditional real estate, but you also offer this. And let's say nobody chooses that. Well, it's a way to engage people and bring them into your world and show that you're listening. So we built out the concept, and I was glad to do it, and I was glad that it was received well, because we absolutely, going into this and knowing that things are going to get weird, the notion that we would, as you said, Ashley, demonize or write off or simply scoff at the new ways that are going to emerge seems to me not smart. Let me put
Correct.
it that way. And
Yes.
So we need, as we go forward, to have an open mind about some of the things and the moving parts and find opportunity where it presents itself. And that's what the whole exercise was about, right?
No, that's great. And we linked it into the chat so you guys can see it. I looked at it earlier and I thought it was great. And the first thing that went through my mind when we start talking about this kind of more a la carte menu service kind of aspect was, but I want to stick to my traditional, service offerings and everything else. But wait a second. Do you mean I can get paid for maybe a less amount of time. And that's another revenue stream that I have where I'm doing, this is service 1 and this is service 2 and this is service 3. And I still get to do all of these things and pour into my clients, but I get to figure out that one size doesn't fit all. And I'm serving the need of my client directly and asking them what they're looking from this experience from me instead of expecting that the experience that they want is the one I'm offering, right? And I'm just assuming that they want all of these things. And I truly just think that dialogue piece is huge. And so I hope people will look at that more. So we're going to go over a couple of minutes because one thing we want is for people to, if nothing else, Brian, because of course we want them to join 1000 Watt as a member, and you do that with individual agents and companies, which I think is great. So there's, again, not a one size fits all, right, for the membership. But you do have a great newsletter that our members can subscribe to. So we'll go ahead and if you go on the 1000 Watt website, you can see that there. We've just put it in the chat. So you guys can go on there, put in your email, get the dose, which is the 1000 Watt newsletter. And we love that because Brian and his team will continue to be feeding into you guys as well. But I would be remiss if I didn't give an opportunity for you guys to kind of give some closing remarks as well. And Justin, it looked like you already had some.
I was just going to say the second most open newsletter in real estate. I mean, we got you got the Metro Text newsletter,
of course.
First, but other than that, Brian.
Fair point.
Definitely the dose, number 2 relative to.
Fair point.
I would say, Brian, thank you for coming on. I think what I love right now is we're trying to engage in these conversations is as an industry, there's been one way of doing things for so long. And, so many of the real estate practitioners right now are looking for the quote new way.
Right.
And what I love about what you're teaching, Brian, and trying to inject into the marketplace is this idea that there is a new way to think about this holistically, that I think if we can all get into that holistic mindset, it'll be great. But the outcome of that mindset is 17 new ways.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing that this settlement was all about, and all the conversation has been about making lots of businesses make different decisions about how they want to run their business. I think that's what we're faced with. And I think the mindset, Brian, that you're putting into the ethos is exactly the right mindset to attack from. So thank you so much for being on.
Well, Justin, thank you for the kind words. And you stated it very well. So it's a challenging and interesting and somewhat exciting time to be in this business. Thank you, Ashley. I appreciate you. This is a great conversation. I appreciate, the spirit of like openness and intelligence with which you engage these conversations. Like not all of these conversations are fun, frankly.
No, they're not. But, with the, I'll end it with the interim pain and discomfort that I know we're feeling. We're a weekend, by the way, Brian. We didn't wait for the 17th in Texas. So we're a weekend to offers of compensation being plucked out of the MLS and really navigating this new structure. But I do believe on the other side of this, as this glow is coming over your head, that there will be positivity that will come out of these new ways, as Justin said, that there's not just one way, there might be 17 ways, and ultimately it's a better way to serve the consumer. We're going to run our businesses in probably a more independent way, which will also be very freeing. And entrepreneurial. That's what we sit there and say. We're entrepreneurs, and we're going to get into that. And we're just so excited to continue to partner with 1000 Watt and you, Brian, to bring this information to our members. Thank you so much for pouring into us and doing that today.
Well, thank you both for having me. It was a pleasure. So thank you.
Good. Awesome. Well, hopefully you guys will watch his webinar, sign up for the dose, and maybe look into membership with 1000 Watt, because as we continue to grow into this new landscape and era, what I do know is that people need realtors. and people need thriving, successful, professional realtors. And I'm so glad, Brian, that 1000 Watt is there to partner with so many, just as the realtor organization is. And we want to continue to be that indispensable resource every which way we can. So everyone, enjoy the rest of your evening. Brian, enjoy your non-humidity. We are so jealous. And hopefully we'll get you to Dallas very soon, maybe when it's not so sticky. Okay.
Look, we have earthquakes and wildfires out here. We got
so you've got your troubles. You've got your troubles too. So, well, good deal. All right, Justin, Brian, thank you. And we'll see you very, very soon.